Hollywood once sold the world a flawless dream. Faces sculpted like marble, gowns that shimmered under the lights, and hair so perfect it seemed untouchable. But here's the secret they never wanted you to know. That hair wasn't always theirs. Behind the cameras, many of the industry's brightest legends battled a silent enemy, hair loss, and the only way to survive was through wigs, toupees, and illusions, so convincing fans never questioned them. From Cleopatra's raven crown to the suave locks of silver screen icons, some of Hollywood's biggest names built their images on carefully crafted lies, and the deeper you look, the more shocking the truth becomes. By the end of this video, you'll never watch a classic film the same way again. In 1963, Elizabeth Taylor stepped onto the screen as Cleopatra, and the world stood still. Her dark, flowing hair framed her violet eyes like a crown fit for a goddess. Audiences believed they were witnessing perfection, but that image wasn't the whole truth. Behind the jeweled headpieces and golden costumes, Taylor was fighting a battle of her own. Years of harsh styling, endless dye jobs, and relentless teasing had left her once thick hair damaged and thinning before she was even 30. By the time Cleopatra's cameras rolled, her dazzling mane was often a wig, custom-made by Italian artisans to blend seamlessly with what little remained of her natural hair. Studio archives later revealed she had over a dozen wigs prepared just for that one film, each tailored for a different scene. Sleek and straight for royal entrances, curled and voluminous for moments of power. To fans, it was just Elizabeth Taylor being larger than life. But in reality, those wigs weren't vanity. They were survival in an industry that demanded beauty without flaw. Even Richard Burton, her co-star and lover, marveled in private letters at how she could change her entire aura just by changing a wig. To him, it wasn't artifice, it was magic. Elizabeth Taylor's story was the perfect illusion. An untouchable goddess whose most iconic feature was, in truth, her best-kept secret. But Taylor wasn't the only legend living behind a disguise. When you think of Humphrey Bogart, you picture the ultimate tough guy, the trench coat in Casablanca, the cigarette hanging from his lips, that slicked back hair that seemed untouchable. But the truth is, by the time Bogart became a household name, that hair wasn't even his anymore. Bogart started losing it in his early 30s, right when his career was beginning to shift from side characters to leading roles. And when the Maltese Falcon and Casablanca hit, the studios panicked. For them, a balding leading man wasn't just a cosmetic issue, it was a career-ending liability. The solution? A perfectly tailored hairpiece that would become as much a part of Bogart's persona as the trench coat itself. Cinematographers had to work overtime, carefully adjusting lights so the toupee didn't give itself away. Bogart, always sharp, knew exactly which angles worked best, and would even reposition himself mid-scene if he felt a shadow might reveal his secret. Off-camera, he was just as guarded. He never allowed photographers near his pool, because that was the only place he dared remove it. According to his wife, the actress Lauren Bacall, he protected that privacy fiercely. Water was the only moment Bogart let his guard down. Even when illness struck near the end of his life, he refused to be seen without it. Nurses and close friends recalled how he insisted on having the piece in place, even in the hospital. For a man who defined an entire era of masculine toughness, that hidden vulnerability became the one thing he never wanted the public to see. But Bogart's story was only the beginning, because another Hollywood legend, the woman who practically invented the blonde bombshell, was hiding a secret of her own. Long before Marilyn Monroe, there was Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell. In the 1930s, her platinum hair didn't just turn heads, it changed Hollywood. Films like Platinum Blonde and Red Dust made her shimmering crown the ultimate symbol of glamour. But what the cameras didn't show was the price she paid to keep that look alive. To achieve her iconic shade, Harlow's hair was bleached with brutal chemical mixes, ammonia, peroxide, and other harsh concoctions that left her scalp raw and her hair brittle. Studio beauty columns from the time praised her radiant glow, but behind the scenes, her once healthy locks were breaking, thinning, and falling out. By her mid-20s, Harlow relied on wigs crafted by Hollywood pioneer Max Factor to maintain the illusion of effortless perfection. Each piece was tailored to the role: soft curls for Bombshell, tight waves for Dinner at 8, sleek bobs for others. Fans thought they were watching nature's perfect blonde when in fact they were watching artistry in disguise. Her co-star Clark Gable once admitted in private letters that she grew frustrated with the endless hours of styling and the secrecy she had to maintain. But the illusion was too valuable to break. Harlow was Hollywood's golden girl, and the truth would have cracked the image studios worked so hard to protect. Tragically, she never got the chance to tell her side. At just 26, Harlow's life was cut short, and only afterward did whispers of her struggles with wigs and damaged hair begin to surface. Yet her legend endured. To this day, she remains the woman who made blonde a symbol of power, even if that blonde wasn't entirely her own. But while Harlow's hair was quietly slipping away, another star was gliding across the silver screen with secrets of his own. Frank Sinatra was more than just a singer. He was an icon, the skinny kid from Hoboken, who transformed himself into the chairman of the board. But behind the sharp suits, the swagger, and those piercing blue eyes, there was another transformation happening. By his 30s, Sinatra was already losing his hair, and by the 1950s, it was disappearing fast. That timing couldn't have been worse. His career was on shaky ground until From Here to Eternity revived his reputation. Suddenly, he needed not just a comeback, but a whole new image. The solution was a toupee so natural-looking, it became part of the Sinatra mystique. Unlike other stars who guarded their wigs with paranoia, Sinatra's hairpiece became something of an open secret among his inner circle. On stage with the Rat Pack in Vegas, Dean Martin would sometimes joke about Frank's little helper up top. The crowd roared, Sinatra smiled, but deep down he hated anyone outside that circle mentioning it. Still, with friends he could turn it into a gag. Sammy Davis Jr. recalled a night when Sinatra mailed his toupee to Dean in a box with a note that read, "Even I needed the day off." There are even stories of Sinatra pulling it off in recording sessions, hanging it on the microphone stand like it needed a break too. And of course, he didn't stop at one. Sinatra traveled with multiple versions, sleek, polished ones for the stage, more natural styles for movies, and casual pieces for his off hours. His valet later admitted, Mr. S treated it like part of his uniform, no different than cufflinks or a bow tie. And maybe that was the secret. Sinatra never let the wig define him, he defined it. As Tony Bennett once said, Frank could make anything seem cool. He wore the hairpiece. The hairpiece didn't wear him. But while Sinatra turned his secret into a playful badge of confidence, Hollywood's toughest cowboy had his own rugged disguise, one designed not for ballrooms but for the wild frontier. John Wayne was the definition of rugged American masculinity. The broad shoulders, the slow drawl, the cowboy hat tilted just right. It all built the image of a man born to ride through the frontier. But even the Duke had a Hollywood trick up his sleeve. Or rather, under his hat. Wayne started losing his hair in his late 30s, right around the time Stagecoach launched him into stardom. For most actors, that might have been a crisis. For Wayne, it became just another piece of costuming. His hairpieces weren't slick or polished like Sinatra's. They were deliberately styled to look a little messy, windswept and sun-worn, the way a cowboy's hair should naturally look after days on the trail. The challenge, though, was keeping them in place during the rough-and-tumble stunts that defined his films. Shooting in the blistering winds of Monument Valley meant constant battles with dust, sweat, and galloping horses. His team even designed a special bandana that fit under his cowboy hat, keeping the toupee locked down during chase scenes and fight sequences. Unlike some stars who treated their hairpieces like sacred relics, Wayne didn't attach much emotion to it. To him, it was just another tool of the trade, no different from a revolver on his hip or a saddle under him. Friends recalled that in private, Wayne had no problem removing the piece around people he trusted, but the second a stranger walked in the room, the hair went right back on. As he once joked to a young actor, "This damn thing's hotter than a tin roof in August, but the ladies seem to like it, so on it stays." But while Wayne used his hairpiece to reinforce a rugged, natural image, another Hollywood icon needed perfection, down to the very last strand. If Hollywood ever produced a man who seemed flawless, it was Cary Grant. The accent, the suits, the effortless charm. He was the model of sophistication. Critics even called him the man from Dream City, and part of that dream was his thick, immaculate hair, never out of place. But the truth, that hair was as carefully crafted as his tuxedos. Grant began losing his natural hair in his mid-30s, right when he was climbing to the very top as Hollywood's romantic leading man. For a star whose entire career depended on appearing perfect, even the smallest flaw could be devastating. So his solution was simple, but expensive. Grant's wigs were among the most advanced, most costly in Hollywood. According to his longtime stylist, they cost nearly 10 times more than what most actors wore. Each hair was hand-knotted into material so fine it was practically invisible, even under the harshest close-ups. And he didn't stop at just one. Grant traveled with an entire collection of toupees, each tailored for a different kind of role. If he was playing the polished romantic in the Philadelphia Story, the hairpiece was sleek and precise. If he was in a more rugged adventure like Gunga Din, the piece had a looser, more natural style. Unlike many actors, Grant even allowed his wigs to age with him. As he grew older, he let them gray naturally. That choice gave his look a subtle authenticity that kept audiences from noticing the illusion. While other stars clung to impossibly youthful hairlines into their 60s, Grant's gradual change kept him believable and timeless. Behind closed doors, he sometimes joked about it. Alfred Hitchcock once recalled Grant referring to his toupee as his realistic therapy. For Grant, it wasn't about vanity, it was business. As he told a friend, the public pays to see Cary Grant, not a bald man they don't recognize. And while Grant hid his hair loss behind immaculate discretion, Hollywood's fiery redhead was living with a secret even more shocking, one that had been engineered by the studios themselves. Rita Hayworth didn't just light up the screen, she ignited it. With her fiery auburn hair cascading in perfect waves, she became the ultimate pin-up queen of the 1940s. In Gilda, one toss of her hair was enough to stop time. But what audiences didn't know was that her iconic look came with a dark cost, one engineered not by nature, but by the studio system itself. When Columbia Pictures decided to transform Margarita Cancino into Rita Hayworth, executives thought her natural look wasn't glamorous enough. Their solution? A painful procedure to raise her hairline through electrolysis, literally burning away parts of her scalp to create what they believed was a more photogenic forehead. Combined with years of harsh dye jobs to maintain her glowing red mane, the damage was irreversible. By the mid-1940s, wigs had become her secret weapon. Crafted by Columbia's finest costume designers, these pieces weren't just cover-ups, they were works of art. Hand-knotted strands that shimmered under Technicolor lights, each wig was tailored to the role, fiery and free-flowing in You Were Never Lovelier, elegant and restrained in CoverGirl. On-screen, the illusion was flawless. Off-screen, Hayworth confided to friends that she felt trapped by the image the studio had built. The red hair, the sultry persona, it wasn't truly hers, but she was forced to live inside it. Publicists worked overtime to spin the story, selling her as the love goddess while burying any whispers of hair loss or wigs. Rita Hayworth's story reveals just how far Hollywood would go to create an icon, and how much the stars themselves had to sacrifice to maintain the illusion. And while Rita was sculpted by the studio machine, another star took the opposite path, clinging to his toupees as part of one of Hollywood's most famous transformations. Few roles in cinema history demanded more perfection than James Bond. Suave, deadly, irresistible, Bond had to look flawless in every frame. And when Sean Connery first stepped into the tuxedo in Dr. No 1962, audiences believed they were seeing the perfect man. The truth? That iconic jet black hair was a masterfully crafted illusion. Connery began losing his hair shockingly early, by his mid-20s. By the time he was cast as 007, he was already significantly bald. Producers knew a secret agent couldn't be seen with a receding hairline, so they equipped him with custom-built hairpieces tough enough to survive anything the role demanded: fight scenes, underwater dives, and steamy romantic encounters. His toupees became as essential to Bond's image as the Aston Martin or the Walther PPK. But here's where Connery broke the mold. By the early 1970s, he was tired of the artifice. In Diamonds Are Forever, 1971, he was still wearing the full Bond wig. But just 2 years later, in The Offense, 1973, he appeared with his natural baldness on full display. It was a radical decision for a leading man of his stature. Most stars clung desperately to their illusions. Connery walked away from his. That choice redefined him. Instead of losing his leading man status, he created a new standard of mature masculinity. Films like The Untouchables and The Hunt for Red October proved that bald could be just as powerful and just as sexy as a full head of hair. Director Sidney Lumet once recalled Connery's reasoning. "Sean told me, 'I'm not Bond anymore, I don't need to hide, let's show the real me.'" It was a bold move that most stars would never dare, and it only added to his legend. While Connery broke free from the illusion, another legend, perhaps the most mysterious star of all time, used hers to build an image that still captivates the world today. Greta Garbo was more than a star, she was an enigma. With her soft golden waves and her hauntingly distant gaze, she became Hollywood's most mysterious figure. In films like Camille and Grand Hotel, her beauty seemed untouchable, almost otherworldly. But even Garbo's ethereal image was carefully constructed, guarded by secrets she carried until the end. By her early 30s, Garbo's hair had begun thinning, the result of stress and years under Hollywood's relentless demands. For most actresses, that might have been a scandal waiting to break. But Garbo handled it in her own way, with silence, scarves and wigs that became as much a part of her myth as her performances. Her wigs weren't just practical, they were masterpieces. Crafted by MGM's best designers, they blended seamlessly into her roles. Soft curls for Queen Christina, sleek bobs for Ninotchka. Off-screen, she often wrapped her head in turbans or wide-brimmed hats, not just as fashion statements but as shields. Publicists cleverly spun these choices as exotic, adding to her mystique while concealing the truth. But unlike many of her peers, Garbo never treated wigs as vanity. They were armor. She despised the scrutiny of fame and used every tool she could to keep the world at a distance. Even in private, she was meticulous, adjusting wigs so that they caught the light perfectly, preserving the illusion of eternal elegance. When Garbo walked away from Hollywood in 1941, at only 36, she left the screen at the height of her power. Fans begged for her return, but she never did. In her exile, the scarves and hats remained, keeping her secret intact. The enigma lived on, untouched, untouchable. Greta Garbo's wigs weren't just about beauty. They were about control. She decided how much of herself the world could see. And in doing so, she became the one thing Hollywood could never manufacture. A true mystery. Hollywood's golden age shimmered with perfection. But behind the glamour lay a world built on illusion. Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra wigs, Bogart's trusty fedora, Jean Harlow's platinum crown, Sinatra's armor of toupees. Every star had their secret. Some wore wigs to survive, some to transform, and others to protect themselves from the crushing weight of fame. These weren't just props. They were shields, tools, and sometimes even weapons. They kept careers alive, protected fragile confidence, and allowed legends to appear larger than life. And yet the stories behind them remind us of something simple but powerful. Stardom has never been about truth. It has always been about belief. When we watch those old films today, it's easy to get lost in the fantasy. But now, knowing what was hidden in plain sight, the question lingers: does the illusion make the stars less real, or does it make them even greater?